RWBY episode 100 Dark. This, of course, is Volume 8, Episode 8, and it is also the mid-season premiere. So, with all those things combined, I was hoping for a better episode, I'll be honest. I didn't hate the episode. There was definitely good things in it. There were some things that were just like, and then some things that just really disappointed me. So I'll start with the pure disappointment, because it seems like there's this weird personal attack on everything I like about RWBY, where I'm just like, man, that character's really going places. They're showing that character's really tough. They do very unique things. They are in this very particular light. And then instantly, that's all snatched away from me, and they're killed. So, much like with Adam, obviously I like Adam way more than I like the Hound. The Hound comes in, amazing intro. You know, like, kidnaps Oscar. The heroes failed. I was like, I love this character. I thought they were going to lose again, and he was going to like, actually kidnap Penny. And I was like, wow, I want to see this happen. Like, I think I mentioned before, I want the heroes to lose because they constantly win over and over. I'm like, I want them to have actual adversity. Like, the world being messed up around them, it's not really them losing. That's just like the story continues because things are just that chaotic. They're dealing with like literally godlike stuff. So it's like, okay, you know, things can just keep getting bad. They don't lose though. Like, it's different when the story is crazy and everybody's losing versus these characters in this very particular moment in time lose. So they don't in this episode, which kind of sucks. But that's what I was hoping for. I was like, okay, Hound comes in, bashing people left and right. I mean, if anything, the Hound was basically in the place of the heroes in this episode, because throughout all of RWBY, the heroes win. Like, that's just what they do. Whether it's a conversation, they pull a Naruto move, like, I gotta talk to you, or they just win for fighting. In this episode, the Hound came in, he's just bashing people. RWBY went down in one hit. He jumped on her, and she passed out. I was like, that's fast. I like it because it's the Hound. I accepted it solely based on the fact that I thought the whole point was like, look how tough this character is, when they're like, oh, it's especially because the first thing Blake said was like, it's just a Grimm, we gotta focus. And then it was like, oh, look at that, she got knocked out in one hit. Blake, what's about to happen to you? And she gets backhanded, and then he takes off. And so the way they kind of teased it a little bit, I was enjoying it. I was like, okay, this character is really tough. They need more than like 4 people at a time. They all have to eventually, whenever, you know, things kind of lead to that climactic battle where, you know, everyone ends up in one spot at a time, that's when they'll finally be able to take down the Hound. And it made perfect sense. I was like, oh, they're going to just keep losing when it's like these small teams here and there, and they just aren't prepared for this threat. This team will lose the first time, then this team will lose the first time, and then the second time, everyone will have different concepts of like, how do we take this thing down, especially with the revelation. How do we take this thing down, and what can we utilize to destroy this enemy that can grow larger and literally, you know, grow dragon wings and stuff. But instead, that did not happen. You know, RWBY does her thing, which is why she's here. Weiss would have been here because it was a very, you know, Schnee family type of episode, but Weiss herself didn't do much. I mean, she was in the room, and then she left the room, and then she got hit into a piano, and that just completely obliterated her aura. She just was like, ooh, my back, and all her aura just disappeared. And I was like, And then she shot the thing. She shot like 4 spikes, and then was just like, he's leaving. Hey, Mom. And I was like, what is she doing? Like, you know what's happening, right? Like, you know that he's in the house to track down Penny, which he could have done from the outside, because that was why he dropped RWBY, because he picked her up. And he thought it was RWBY because they, you know, have her fluids on her and stuff. And then he saw the green light and realized, oh, that's who I'm after. And then he dropped RWBY, which I thought was kind of funny. I was like, oh, her aura came back because it shattered again when she hit the ground. And so I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. You know, she had a little bit of time to heal, and then she was like extra knocked out. And so instead of flying over, he was like, I'm going to fly through the front, and he blew the walls open, and then it was like, oh, I need to be tactful here because, you know, these giant dragon wings, they're going to be in my way. So I got to, you know, I got to do it. I got to make the smart moves. These wings are too much. But he could have, you know, if he was smart enough to think, this is too much inside the house, why not be smart enough to just fly to the window? Super weird. Super weird. But gets in the house. Weiss does a cool dodge because Willow helped her out. You know, she was flipping out. She was like, I got to get more liquor. And then she, I guess, decided to not do that, and she helped her daughter out. So that was a decent little moment. I thought the fight was actually going to be cool there, and then instead she got, you know, hit into a piano out my back. Her aura's gone, and she was just like, pew, pew, and then just stopped. And I guess it was because her aura was out, but I would have thought she could have done something else. Like, we saw in here, and this is like one of the coolest things about the episode because it was a tease. whatever she was about to do, she was about to summon that had like different wings, because it wasn't just going to be like another bee. It looked like it was going to be a giant bird. And I was like, oh, and it could have been a Nevermore, which technically wouldn't have been the most insane thing, but I don't think we've actually seen her do that. But it was something that had like bird wings and not like insect wings. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then of course, the Hound was like, nah. And I was like, I would have loved to have seen that, but that was a little tease for something new, and so we'll get to see that later. So that should be fun. Maybe the suit of armor will just have like angel wings or something, which I think would actually be very cool. So we'll see if that ends up happening. But they teased it, and then it didn't happen. I was like, all right, I can understand that. They go through the fights and stuff. We actually get to see Blake use her. I just call them shadow clones admittedly, but she uses them with the dust, which we haven't seen in quite a while. So she uses the ice, she uses the explosion, and I thought that was cool. She got backhanded with her own ice clone, so it was like, well, that sucks for you. She, reverse Sub-Zero. She just got hit with her own ice image. So I was like, all right. So she's getting taken down. She's basically whining to RWBY like, the only way we'll survive is, we all need you. And I know that RWBY has her eye blast, but it was like, you guys have fought a lot of crazy things. Like, you fought Adam, by yourself for a long time. Like, you were surviving, doing some Spider-Man moves. Like, she can fight. It's not like she's useless. And I know it was a new gross type of creature that's spitting up acid, so it was different. And they fought, she fought like two crazy different things at one time, where it was like this crazy hound that just grew wings and then flew into the house. Like, I haven't seen that one before. And then the bugs come in, and then, it's like, I haven't seen this bug before. So things were getting a little weird. I understand that, but she's done some stuff. Like, it's not like she's just weak and she can't really pull it off. Like, she's good. And it was literally the beginning of the fight. I mean, it wasn't the beginning, because we see that she's fighting the creature. They show like when Willow's looking at her phone, or whatever they actually call them, but her phone. She's looking through the security footage. They show Blake is kind of dealing with this creature. So, a few swings or whatever were thrown, but it was still early on in the fight, and she was already in like, help me mode. Like, I don't know if you can hear me, but I really need your help right now. And I'm like, this is hardly anything new. Like, I know that this creature is different, and it did seem a little bit smarter than most of the Grimm that they fought, because it did seem like it was actually blocking and utilizing its different capabilities. So it seems like that's something I like to think that's something we can look forward to. If they decide to add more new Grimm, they'll just be smarter, and the fights may not be as bombastic where there's multiple enemies. But if there's one cool enemy, that's fine. Much like the Hound, I thought it was kind of the, not on the same level with as far as this bug is concerned, because of course it died. But I was like, okay, I like the idea that I'm getting from this, where they could have tougher Grimm that they fight that are maybe not like ridiculous like the Elephant Grimm, which I can't think of the name of those, of course, but not as like insanely ancient and stuff like that, where they're just impossible to defeat. They're on the same scale, slightly larger than the characters and stuff, but they're smarter. They're more agile, or, something like that. I like the concept. It's, quality over quantity sort of deal. So I thought was kind of a hint at what we could be getting. I doubt they'll go too far with that, because then they would have to be making up a bunch more Grimm, and then they would have to spend time on really epic fights, which I'm like, if they do that, they're going to make it all story-based fights. So if they add new Grimm in, it'll probably just be new Grimm, and then that's pretty much it. So it's a balancing act there, and I don't think we'll get kind of the best of both worlds is what I would love. But I think if we get new Grimm, it'll just be like, oh, that's crazy, that's a new Grimm. And then it might be like this, where it was like, oh, it was kind of a tough fight, but it was also super short and not really like that cool. Like, none of the actual fighting in this episode was really that amazing. Like, the coolest thing I think that happened was the tease from Weiss, and the fact that Willow, when she actually saved Whitley, she made her own summon, and it was like, oh, that's super cool. And she made a boar, and it was like, oh, like, she can do that too. And I kind of would have liked to have seen that just without a weapon, like, just see her focus and just the portal shows up. I don't know why, but I was like, for some reason, because of how they kind of drive it into our heads when it comes to, Weiss and Winter, it's always based on like the point of the sword or stabbing it into the ground to make the portal. But for Willow, she has nothing. So like, does she have to put her hand out? Can she think it? It's a weird physical thing. Like, what does she have to do to kind of activate her power? Can she just think and it's just like, there it is, a portal showed up, and it's just bland? Is that why they don't show it? But I'd kind of like to see it just because. So I thought it was cool. Whitley wasn't a twat in this episode, so that was nice. They're showing like, hey, I suffer too, I can be cool, and he was. And so I was like, all right, that's nice. Him and Weiss had that little moment where she's like, can you handle this? Like, if you can handle that. It's like, oh, a little bit of a quip. She's annoyed by him, and he's kind of messing with her, and he's still annoyed with his mom, and it's like, you're the last thing I need right now as far as a distraction. And he was getting pissed off, like, look, this is a serious moment. Please don't talk to me. And then it was like, oh, I could die here. So I was like, okay, I like what they did with this character. And we just have to wait and see. Ultimately, It was an okay episode. They did the epic reveal at the end, like, oh crap, it was actually a faunus. We'll see how that plays out. I don't know if it has to be a faunus. Maybe it can be a human. I would assume with the fact that this Grim could grow wings, it has to be a faunus to kind of tap into a couple of extra abilities. It could be, their semblance, and it could be the fact that they're a faunus, so they have other natural abilities. Because if it was a human, that's just one extra step of abilities that you can't, implement inside of this Grim. So that's something which, had they not killed Adam, that's something they could have gone down. It's like, we have to use faunus for this because those are the greatest weapons that I can create. If I made humans, why waste my time on lesser weapons? And, with Salem being like the big bad villain, it's not that much of a difficulty to be like, well, I want to grab a bunch of humans, but I'll just grab a bunch of faunus. It's easy for me because I'm the main villain. Like, it's easy to kind of let that go where it's like, it would be easier to get humans, but it's not that much harder for the main villain to grab faunus. But none of that matters because no one cares. Like, Adam isn't there, and everyone else doesn't give a crap because they're the bad guy. So Adam would have been the only person where they even could have possibly gone down that storyline. I mean, they could still do it, and it would, like, kind of affect Blake, and, it would affect RWBY as well. Because even her, it was like, oh, crap, it was a human. So it wasn't like she was like, it was a faunus. She just said, it's a human. Because to her, she's not a douchebag, so it's just a person was in there. So they could talk about it, but it's just going to be like, evil person did evil, and it was new evil. It's cool. It's cool for us, but story-wise, there's not much else they can do. They're only going to be more shocked, and then it's just like, well, okay, she did something else evil, and you're just more shocked by it because it's a new shock. And that's about it. That's all that they can do with that because Adam is dead, so no one on the inside of the villains can do anything with that where it becomes something special that kind of changes the story arc. Like, they might throw a few words in there, and maybe if they want, they could go with Hazel, and Oscar could kind of F with them and be like, she's using faunus for now, but, they could go that route with eventually she'll get tired of taking that extra step. Yeah, she's the big bad, but at some point she'll be tired, so she'll just go to humans. And what about that? What do you think of that idea? So they could do it with that, but I don't know, like, I feel like it won't have that much of an impact. It'll just be like, holy crap, for the heroes, that's crazy. Now we're killing humans if she sends out more special faunus, or more special Grim. So I like the concept. We'll see where it goes. I wish they didn't kill the Hound. I wish they just revealed it and then he still managed to escape, because I'm like, every time a villain does something useful, they have to die. That's why Cinder's alive. She does nothing. So we'll see what happens with that, because she goes in for the rescue, and we'll see. She runs past the guards. I thought that was kind of funny where she just smirks, and then she's like, I got jet boots now, and she just flies off, and that's the end of the episode. But I was like, okay. So we got the jailbreak. So, Crow is out now, and I assumed that was him, because for a split second when I first watched the episode, I was like, was that Raven? Because I just wasn't thinking. I was like, random explosion. I just assumed he was knocked down, and then there's just a bird there, and I'm like, why is Raven here? Which, that would be too cool, because something good would have to happen. So it wasn't her. It was just Crow turn, because that made sense. Where it's like, this crazy explosion, poof, I disappeared, and it's like, why is this random bird here? And then he can just fly off to freedom. So I assume that that's what happened. I guess Robin may or may not have been buried under the rubble, just like Watts was, because that's how he got rescued, like with the rocks being pulled off of him. So I assume that's what happened to her, and Crow will probably just transform back. Once Cinder is left, we'll see him hopefully in the next episode. It's just like, boom, I transform back. I hope you guys get Robin out, and then things are too chaotic to be worried about us in prison. So we'll see something happen there, because I've been waiting for them to kind of break out for a while, because I'm like, I know once they get out, things have to kind of advance at least a little bit. I'm hoping. I certainly hope. But it was an okay episode. I feel like they didn't do too much crazy with it, especially with it being the 100th episode. It wasn't much of a celebration of the show. If I'm being totally honest, they didn't do anything like insanely spectacular. It wasn't even a long episode. It was 17 minutes. I was like, I would have at least thought, even without it being the 100th, the mid-season premiere, I would have thought after all this time we would have got a longer episode. But it's a longer episode. It's the mid-season premiere, the 100th episode, both those things together should have been longer, or if not longer, at least epic. I mean, the fight could have definitely been cooler. It could have been just the Hound, the whole episode, just the Hound, like none of the other creatures in any way, shape, or form. It couldn't get to Penny because they were fighting it and just trying to hold it off the entire episode. That's all it had to have been, and I feel like it could have been a cooler episode. Just one spot, or at least, inside the house and outside the house. Maybe it starts exactly the way it did, which is a fantastic start. Like, they get the power back on, Blake sees it out the window behind Ruby. Amazing start to that thing, and then it's chaotic. It's like, the best thing is always whenever you want to say like something super powerful, someone's talking on comms, and then they say it's and then it cuts off. That's how you know something is dangerous. That's universal. So it had a great start to it, where it's like clearly they can't even talk because this thing is that powerful, and it's interrupting. Well, technically the centipedes were the ones that interrupted Weiss, but that's all they needed. It was just like maybe those centipedes, but the hound is the thing that they were, chasing down. Is like, all right, well, I have to take care of Ruby, but can you hold it off until I can wake her up, or we at least get closer to the house? Just little stuff. And I'm like, if it was just the hound, I feel like it would have been a way cooler episode. I think the action could have at least been better instead of the way that they did it, because everything just felt super short. I mean, obviously, Ruby was just constantly being knocked out. She got pushed on the ground, and then she fell a couple feet, and she passed out again. And then when she woke up, I don't think she really did anything until the flash. After that, like, she didn't physically fight again. She just got super pissed off and was like, "That's enough." And then she, flashed it. Weiss didn't do much. Yeah, she got interrupted, backed into a piano, and then she shot like four little ice shards, and she made the ice wall, so that was nice. And that was pretty much it. Yeah, Blake did most of the work in this episode, and even that wasn't really that fun to watch. Like, it was cool because we got to see her do like her little clone jutsu, but it wasn't that amazing to me. It was just cool because she did something that we hadn't seen her do in a long time, specifically utilizing the dust with her images. So I was like, okay, that was, it was cool to watch, but I felt like it was still a short fight, even when they actually did that. And her just talking through the whole thing, like, there's no way I can win this. I really need your help. Like, we all can only do this if you're here to help us out. And it just made it a little extra weird for me. But all in all, it was a decent episode. It's a bit of a disappointment if I put like the weight of the 100th episode plus the mid-season premiere. It's super disappointing if I look at it in that regard. So I try just to say it's just the next episode of RWBY, even though we've waited like 2 months, and I would have thought with that extra time we would have had either an epic episode, especially considering the last one was fairly normal, something epic, or at least a longer episode. Like, just combine this episode and the next episode together and just be like, boom, here you go. And that's just I feel like they probably should have just done that. Maybe they didn't have the time. I don't know. But I was definitely hoping for something more than this for the mid-season premiere, plus it being the 100th episode. I think the most special thing that happened with this is the fact that Roosterteeth put out a thanks for 100 episodes little video on YouTube. Other than that, this episode was just another episode. You would never know. If you just happen to watch the whole series, you would have no concept that this in any way, shape, or form was a 100th episode, like a seminal episode for this series. Because technically it wasn't a seminal episode. It was just an episode. It wasn't anything special at all. So in that regard, I'm a bit disappointed by it, because I was excited. I was like, man, it's been an extra chunk of time here. I was looking forward to something really big. And it was just like, it was cool. The Hound is amazing. Just the concept of that is super cool. And then they killed him at the end, and I was like, well, that sucks, because I was hoping that he would just be another good recurring villain that was right under a trusting right hand of the main villain that actually got stuff done. But as usual, anyone that does that in this show has to die. So we're just stuck with Cinder, and that's just how it is. So we'll see what happens next week. But it was a decent episode. I am just disappointed with, and obviously it's just personal stuff, putting that weight on it. Like, it's the mid-season premiere, it's the 100th episode. I was really expecting something, not like the best episode ever, but at least a cool one. Maybe the best episode this season, or at least, even if it wasn't the best, at least one of the best episodes this season. And it was just like, oh, it was cool. They definitely did some good stuff. It probably will be, considering how the episodes sometimes tend to go up and down, even though this season has been paced fairly well. I will admit that. So it might still be up there, just for the simple fact that it was the epic reveal at the end. That in itself is a great moment for the season, but we'll just have to wait and see. But I did enjoy the episode. It's just like, I was hoping for a little bit more for the 100th episode of RWBY. But I would love to know what you guys thought on it. I feel like I was super harping on it, especially just now the past minute or two, going into like what I was hoping for. But I would love to know what you guys thought about it. It was the 100th episode. I mean, am I just putting too much on that? Especially with it being the mid-season premiere. It was definitely both those things combined, I think, is why it really hit so hard. And the mid-season finale didn't really do much for me either. I was like, I thought that was going to be like an epic cliffhanger, and it was just like, okay, yeah, she crashed, but we knew she was going to crash, and she just showed up in front of who she crashed to go in front of. So I was like, okay, Penny crashed. Saw that one coming a little bit. And then this one was just like, she's in bed. Okay. The only thing that I think really came out of that was she was being controlled, and it seemed like whatever Watts was doing, I don't know if the vault was technically the prison, which I don't think it was. I can't remember. It's been a minute, and I hardly pay attention. I just kind of watch what they do, and I don't think the vault has really come up as like a specific thing. So I think that's just the prison where they're at. Or no, the vault is, I know what the vault is. The vault is the actual vault where the staff is. So the only thing that came out of that I found was interesting is that she was going directly to the vault, and there was somehow this weird miscommunication between, you know, Watts controlling her and then this crazy creature. And maybe it's because Watts was knocked out, so she was programmed with, I have to go to the vault, and he was programmed with, I have to get the girl, and they couldn't do like a bit of cross communication. Like, you know, Watts is like, oh crap, that's her new thing, which I guess technically he wouldn't know the Salem made that, but it could be like, oh hey, hold on a second, you're a Grim, let me just let you know what's going on here, I'm in full control, just let me pass. So I assume that that's what happened there, because I'm like, this is weird that they're not on the same page, but I think it was he set to do one thing, and then she set to do one thing, and Watts was knocked out, so he couldn't be like, oh, this is what's happening, hold on, we can solve this problem right now. So I think that's what came of that. Otherwise, they're going to be setting up some new tricks, which I think they're doing anyway, because Cinder came in and she was like, you know, it's my time to ask the questions or ask for a favor. So I think that's where that's headed anyway. So I guess it doesn't really matter that they weren't able to communicate, and it probably helps because that allowed for Willow and Whitley to actually kill off the Hound, and then that leaves Watts to just be like, oh, well, all that said and done, I can't change it now, he's dead. So, hey, you want this favor, Cinder? Sure. So I assume that that's where it's headed, and Watts is just going to be like, well, if you think we can pull it off, I guess I'll help you out. So I guess that's where it's headed. But other than that, I'm just like, okay, yeah, episode kind of went along and things went as anticipated. Like I said, we'd love to know what you guys thought about it. I'm harping on this episode too much. I would love to know your thoughts on it. 100th episode, though. I mean, should that have been a bit more special? We'd love to know your thoughts on it, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, least favorite parts about it. And of course, going forward, they have killed off the Hound. I would love to know, do you think we're going to get another Grim that's just like that? Are they going to dive into the element of faunus and possibly humans as well being used to make a more intelligent Grim? Is that just going to kind of fall to the wayside or something? What happens next? You know, where we are right now, I think we're probably going to see the Aesops in the next episode, and I would hope we see whatever ends up happening with Robin and Crow. I hope we get some of that as well. But we'll love to know your theories on what we should expect for the next couple of episodes. And of course, like I said, we'll love to know what you guys thought about episode 100 of RWBY. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.